DHG here, doing the conclusion for the Saints Row reboot. Yep. Kind of what this series was set up for. Alright, now the Saints Row reboot, I knew a little bit before going into it. Normally, when I play new games, I try to stay away from all the news, but given that I had been waiting for another Saints Row game for, well, geez, ever since Saints Row 3 came out, really, since 4 didn't really feel like a Saints game. When I heard that a reboot was coming out, I had to dig in a little bit, and I watched the first trailer, and man, did my stomach drop. And then more news came out about what they were going to do, especially with the character customization crap, which I'll show you here. Okay. What you see there, on the left-hand side. Now, if you go back to older games like Saints Row 2, there's a sex option, male, female. Here, it's just one stupid slider. Apparently, they felt that pandering to the political woke class was going to make their game a success. Or maybe they thought that people like me wouldn't care that much. Oh no, we care. Right here. See, figure. You move it all the way to the one side, it's more masculine. You move it all the way to the other side, it's more feminine. It's ridiculous. It's a complete affront to objective reality. There's men, there's women, and then there's people with extra chromosomes, like Klinefelter's disease. But other than that, you're a man or you're a woman. It's not very hard to understand. Anything else is just playing into adults playing pretend. So there was that, and that was done specifically to pander towards the woke community. That's it. And apparently it didn't work out too well, because right there, Saints Row developer Volition Games has been shut down. That happened August 31st of this year. That sucks, but I mean, they got what they deserved. Unfortunately, they decided to butcher the series, and this isn't my only problem with the game. In fact, you guys know, if you've listened to my conclusions before, that I write down a huge list of pros and cons, things that I felt were good about the game, things that I felt were bad, and sometimes things that are neither. They were just like observations. And the first thing here I put for a con, since I usually get into them first, it does not feel like a Saints Row game. No, it does not. Here's why it doesn't really feel like a Saints Row game, or this is part of it. These are the Saints right here. There's no Johnny Gat, there's no Shawnee, there's no Pierce. You got these woke hipsters here, all trying to survive their college debt in their useless degrees. Apparently that's what they thought the modern... See, I kind of got concerned immediately when they said, a new Saints Row for a new time. One of them said that at some point. As soon as I heard that, I thought, yeah, I've heard that before. The Ghostbusters reboot, the all-female one, a new Ghostbusters for a new time, and an abysmal failure. But here's your Saints right here. Yeah, totally hardcore. They don't even feel like gangsters, they just feel like exactly what they are. A bunch of hipsters. But somehow, they run a street gang, and it's... The boss can be whatever you want it to be. That's the same as it's always ever been. But the only white dude in there, since inclusivity says you gotta have a black person, you gotta have a Hispanic. Asians don't really matter since they're considered white adjacent. You don't gotta throw them in there. They don't count. But then you got the white dude there. I thought, what's his catch? Apparently he's pansexual. That's a fancy word for bisexual. Oh no, that means that you're not including the other genders and blah 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 blah. No, it means bisexual. If you're a man that turns to a woman, then you're a woman, are you not? You went back to binary. Or if you're a woman that turns into a man, then you're a man now, are you not? Yeah, you're still binary. You go from one to the other. You're actually what you are when you're born. Your biological sex determines what you are. You can't just wake up one day and then say, I'm going to be a girl today, or I'm going to be a guy today. Doesn't work like that. The sooner people realize that, the sooner that people that think this way can actually get help. But this game pandered to it. Right here, changes to the Saints Row formula are not welcome. let's go back into that map here. This is the Saints Row world. Let me pause that here. You see, some things are the same, like you got your stores that are highlighted in green, you got these new things in yellow. They're called, what were they called? Discoveries. So they're mostly stupid. Like this, you just run around, pick up drug pallets. That's a little helpful in the beginning of the game when you need cash. But other than that, and then dumpster diving, I don't know if that was supposed to be funny or what. And right here, there's a lot of these. You just take a picture or something. Because running around in a digital world taking pictures is somehow supposed to be fun. And these are your new activities, kind of. They kind of separated the new activities between these blue things, which are called side hustles. This is kind of like a smuggler's run type thing, an old PS2 game. This wingsuit saboteur, that one wasn't that bad. And then this was kind of like the modern version of drug trafficking from the old games. Where you get your actual activities from is this little spot in the upstairs part of your base. This is called the Empire table. Let me pause that here. Each of these little areas that have a circle that's not filled in is some sort of a business venture that you can do. I like the idea of it, but what they ended up doing with this was locking all the activities like mayhem, what was the other one? Insurance fraud, and I think those are the only two that came back. They're locked behind these ventures, and these ventures, you can't really do all of them at the same time. You have to go so far into the game before you unlock new ventures, like you have to go to this certain mission, complete it, and then you can build up, you know, tier 1 empire, tier 2 empire, tier 3 empire, as you can see here. But they tied them to main missions, and if you wanted to get into mayhem right away, you can't do it. You have to be like halfway through the game before you can even do that activity. Insurance fraud is about the same thing. Now, they did manage to add some decent activities with these little business adventures. Let me get into one here. For instance, here's Mayhem, the newest one of it. You get a couple with rocket launchers. It's not like the old games where you start off on level 1 and then you work your way up to level 6, and once you get, you know, level 3 and level 6 completed, then you unlock something. This one, you unlock something at the end. This time you get a tank. Usually in the old games it was some sort of a perk that could help you out. But here's Tank Mayhem. You also get a helicopter one, and the rest of them are with rocket launchers. I mean, Mayhem's always fun, except they changed this system up a little bit. I kind of like the old Mayhem a lot better from Saints Row 2, and Saints Row 3 for that matter, since they're very similar. And here's Insurance Fraud. If you wanted to play that, like I said, you gotta go about halfway through the main missions to even unlock this shit. They didn't do what Saints Row 2 did. And here's Saints Row 2. Since I decided to go back and play it to see how it compares to the new one. And if you take a look here, you've got all these activities available for you to do whenever you want after you complete the second main mission, which takes about 20 minutes to get through the first two. But you got all the activities all lined up for you as soon as you complete the first two missions. As compared to the new Saints Row, where in a new Saints Row you do the business ventures, and like right here, this is a business venture. That right there is another business venture. That's the first one you do, actually. And then you've got a bunch of other ones here. But they didn't make any of the activities available from the first bit. So when you're first starting out the game and you're looking at the big world, the only thing you see to do are these stupid discoveries, and you get these little side hustles or whatever. You're looking around thinking, where the hell's all the activities at? Like I said, they decided to lock them in about halfway through the game for the good ones. The first two activities that you get is go pick up some truck and bring it back. boring as shit. I mean, they made so many missteps with this game that it makes my head spin. That was kind of a long-winded explanation for the second thing there, but I'll get into the third negative I had for this game. The world of Citizens feels dull/fake. Well, that it does. The old Saints Row game, like I was just playing through Saints Row 2, a couple missions in it, and you drive around the world and there's a lot of humor. The citizens are, I mean, it just feels a lot more lively. In this game, it just kind of feels like everyone's standing around being a zombie. There's no life to it whatsoever. There's no interesting dialogue. I mean, I can't think of a single funny or interesting thing that I heard any NPC say. None. It was just boring, bland. It felt fake, which is kind of confusing considering how well made the actual world is. The city of St. Aliso, or whatever it's called, is probably the second best game world they've ever made for the series. Stillwater, Saints Row 2 being the first. Another negative. The controls were better in the old games. Yeah, let me show you some of the combat. Okay, so this is the combat. Once you start shooting enemies here, they pretty much did the whole Grand Theft Auto aiming system, where you zoom in on the enemies and it's got a very strong lock on. Sometimes, I mean, there's been instances where I locked onto things that were 180 degrees behind me. Just do a complete 180 and you're aiming at something behind you because the lock-on's that strong. It's ridiculous. I mean, it didn't happen all that often, but it happened. The old Saints Rows, let me show you here. And here's the old ones. They got a small aiming reticule, and it's very accurate fire. You don't have to zoom in. There's no lock-on or anything. You can do fine aim, but that's usually for just hitting distant targets. They did away with that to try to copy Grand Theft Auto once again, which really makes you scratch your head, because that was one of the good things about the original Saints Row, was that they came up with an aiming system that worked better than the game that they were copying, and with the newest Saints Row, they decided to copy off Grand Theft Auto again. They should have just stayed with this system that they had here in Saints Row 2, where you had a very accurate hip fire, and it was a lot more fun to do this type of combat than what you have in the new game. Another negative, huge negative here. The inclusions of woke politics was completely unnecessary and alienating. This is a lesson to developers that want to be inclusive and woke, and they want to add the diversity, the equity, and the inclusion. I'd like to know how much money people like BlackRock are paying these companies to push this bullshit, or if they're just doing it on their own. It's probably a bit of both. Larry Fink's got a lot of money. But here's something that they need to learn. You can't be inclusive without being exclusive. You can't be inclusive towards any group of people without being exclusive towards another. Inclusivity is a contradictory thing in itself. It does not make any sense. It's alienating by its own nature. It causes the problem that you're trying to create, or you're trying to fix here. Just stop it. Buggy freezes. Oh yeah, let me show you that. Okay, now this wasn't very far into the game. This was my second video. And I was still trying to learn the controls, but I couldn't figure out why the hell I couldn't leave the car, and why is that add song to custom playlist coming up there. I kept hitting the button prompt because that's the same one they used to get out of the car, but I couldn't get out of the car. Apparently it was bugged. The only way that I was able to exit my car until I stopped recording this video and started it back up again, I had to windshield cannon myself the whole time. And that's not the only problem. The game froze up on me numerous times, and there was a very annoying visual bug where the boss would get two dual-wielding weapons and then the weapon that you had been using. I don't know how that bug... It looked retarded. You're carrying like 3 guns. It looked stupid as shit. It didn't really have any effect on the gameplay whatsoever. The guns all still fired fine, but it was super retarded to look at. But the game is still very buggy. Another con. Totally unlikable, unrelatable characters. Yeah, unless you're one of the developers, and I suppose you think that everyone out there has a bunch of college debt and they're woke baristas from Starbucks. You know, you alienated so many people. There's a lot of people out there that don't believe in all this woke bullshit. There's a lot of people that even did go to college at one point in time, like myself, and don't believe it at all. The old Saints Row games at least had a cast of characters that you could actually believe that they were gangsters, even as the game got super silly later on in the series with like number 3. But Saints Row 1 looked like a bunch of hardcore criminals. Saints Row 2 was pretty much the same thing, as much as they joked around there, but Saints Row 3 was where it started getting kind of on the goofy side, where you had gangs like the luchadors, but at least the Saints themselves were a believable group. In this one, they're concerned like with a fucking waffle maker. I can't believe this shit at all. It's totally immersion breaking, and it's junk. Okay, later on in the game, you get different ventures here, and some of them, like once you get on to the other parts of the map, the far west side of the map, I should say, some of these business ventures cost upward of like $1.6 million to start. So any activities that you can have are locked behind that paywall in the game. And that's how all the ventures are. Like I said, you don't even get any of the really fun activities to do until you're at least halfway through the game. Okay, here's something that was neither here nor there, but I'll skip that for now since my list was a little out of order. A negative. The main story ends as badly as it starts. They tried to make the story revolve around how close-knit this group of friends were as saints, which is kind of weird. Like, are they criminal gangsters, you know, hardcore and about making money and getting power, or are they all just worried about having a good time and being friends? They literally made the story revolve around having a good friendship with your friends and being there for them. For a Saints Row game. Are you shitting me? And here's another con. This I already mentioned, but it's worth saying again. All activities are available after second mission in the old Saints Row game, Saints Row 2. I don't know what it was in Saints Row 3, but why didn't they do that here? Why didn't you just do the first main mission, maybe second main mission, somewhere around there, and then they just unlock all the activities? Just another harebrained idea they had for this game. And it's not like they listened to their community either. When they started releasing the trailers, a lot of the community spoke back and they said, hey, we don't like the direction of the game here. We don't like all this wokeness that's going in, and the game looks like garbage. Except the developers apparently just put their fingers in their ears and went, la 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 la, can't hear you. And they've done that on numerous occasions. They said, oh, we think it's going fine. Well, apparently it didn't go fine because you don't have a studio anymore. Maybe you should have listened to your fans. Okay, now here's something that you get into at some point in the game. Since this was a monthly game on PlayStation and gave you the expansion pass, I wasn't sure if this was DLC or not. Turns out no, it's part of the main game. This is some of the quests for Eli. It's not related to any type of gang whatsoever, but it was you LARPing around, live action role playing. The only other game I've seen do anything like this was Sunset Overdrive, and it was pretty funny in that too. But this actually felt like something that the old Saints Row games would have done. But it was completely out of place in this one because this game was humorless. It wasn't funny at all. This was actually a pretty fun activity. Why they didn't actually figure out what made missions like these do so well in the old Saints Row games is beyond me. But this was one of the only enjoyable parts about the game. Another plus, they didn't remove all the old activities. Okay, I already stated that. You still have mayhem. You still have a modified version of drug trafficking, insurance fraud, and the ones where you leave the bad customer reviews and they all come down on you, they can be, I guess, analogous to the Saints Row 3, the gang hideouts that you had. Kind of, but that's pretty much the only 3 that I've noticed from the old ones. Another plus, the world is very detailed visually. Alright, here. This was part of the main missions later in the game. When you look around the world, the character models look like shit. Some of the NPCs don't look that bad, but I noticed the player model just looks terrible, like a wax figure. But the environment, you just drive around, I mean, the environment looks really great. The city is incredibly detailed. The NPCs are terrible, like I said, but it makes me wonder how you had the world layout and the world presentation looks so good, but then other aspects of the game look so bad. But then again, I mean, it's Volition. I think they used an upgraded version of their old Saints Row engines, and Volition's never been very good at making facial models, ever. Something else I think that should be said about this game is that the gangs. In the older games, you had like 2 or 3 gangs you had to take down, and then sometimes there was a final enemy, like in Saints Row 3, and I believe even 2 did that at some point. But in this one, you have Marshall, the Idols, and Panteros. The only one that felt like an actual gang was Panteros. The Idols were these dudes that I was just shooting. When I first encountered them, I said, what the fuck? Because it looks like a pride parade coming to attack you, does it not? Panteros are a bunch of muscle-bound dudes that love, like Fast and Furious type cars. They look like a street gang in this game. Then Marshall is a private military corporation, which kind of reminds you of Stag from number 3, but they didn't really follow the traditional, you take down each specific gang to run your empires. This is just really weird setup in this game. But none of the gangs, other than Panteros, felt very good. I mean, they all felt kind of out of place, much like most of the game. And so my conclusion for Saints Row, given that I don't think I'm missing anything else here, I was originally thinking about giving this an average rating because there was some redeeming qualities that you get to later on in the game. But, like I said, they're later on in the game. If you're apprehensive about playing this game in the first place, you're probably going to do what I would have liked to have done within the first, I will say, hour and a half, which is shut that shit off and just refund it while you still have time. But given that I was recording, I played through, and there did seem to be some redeeming qualities later on in the game, but they come way too late, and it's too late too little. I mean, once I went back to Saints Row 2 and started recording it, I immediately changed my opinion on this one. This game's bad. I mean, I gotta say it. I can't say it's in the terrible category because it has some things to it that people might find fun. And if you're of the woke variety that love this game, yeah, I've seen Reddit forums. They're a small percentage of people. Most people hated this game because Volition is no longer in business. There it is, the Saints Row reboot. Bad.